I'm Russell Lissau, writer and co creator of the Hardways, and you're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people in the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. Welcome back to another interview with another very talented creator, I should say. He's been on the show before. We're going to get his artist, Sean Richardson, on the show later on. I have to schedule with him. But we are joined today by the ever-talented Russell Lissau, talking about the Hardways Volume 2, or issue number 2, I should say. How are you doing today, Russell?
I'm great, Kurt. Thanks a lot for having me back on the show. It's good to see you.
I know. It's great to see you, too. You're looking well. We talked so much in depth about Hardways number 1, and honestly, I thought it was a fun interview. It was really well in depth. You guys brought a lot to the show, and you showed your passion for the comic. But let's talk about the Hardways number 2. I mean, that's coming out pretty soon, isn't it?
Number 2 has been out for about half a week. It came out on Comixology through Comixology Submit on February 24th, digital first, and the reactions have been great. The reviews have been really strong, and the return rate it seems to be pretty good too. People who bought number 1 and came back for number 2, which is a tough get in comics. You know, you don't always hook them for the whole series. But we seem to be doing a pretty good job of that with the Hardways.
Yeah, I got to read the second issue, and I'm like, man, this blows me away. I mean, the writing, the art. We talked about all of this in the first interview, but it's safe to say that your style of writing, especially to really kick a character when he's down, is just it's really mind-boggling and incredible at the same time.
Thank you. You know, this story, I think it's a great story. I think it's a classic kind of film noir crime thriller. You know, about this high-rolling gambler, Maury Garvey, who at the end of a really good streak at the craps table gets kidnapped by strangers. He doesn't know who nabbed him. There's betrayal. There's intrigue. There's double crosses, and we'll see there are triple crosses. There's a lot going on, and I love these characters. Sean loved it too. I mean, when I sent him the script for the first issue, he just flipped out. He immediately loved these characters and latched onto his favorites. And I think that shows in the artwork that he's doing too. He's just doing a tremendous job.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. He's definitely doing an incredible work there. We're continuing the story from issue 1, and you're jumping right back into the action itself. When it comes to a second issue, like you said, the return on investment is obviously doing really well for the Hardways issue 2. As a writer, though, do you find it easier to write the second novel or the second issue, or is it harder?
It's not really an issue. The Hardways was plotted out as a complete story. I knew before I started scripting it what the entire story was going to be. I start with a beat sheet where I say on page 1, this is going to happen. On page 2, this is going to happen. Just one line summaries of the action on each page. And the Hardways, although a 5-issue comic book miniseries, could have easily been a hardcover, self-contained graphic novel. They're not just 5 issues. We call it in the book 5 chapters. Yeah. And I knew exactly what was going to happen in issue 2 and issue 3 and issue 4 and issue 5 because I had broken it down before I even started the scripting. I knew what the important beats were going to be. You know, with a noir story, with a crime thriller, you want to end each issue and each chapter on a cliffhanger. And we've got cliffhangers at the end of each of these chapters, so people should really be driven to pick up the next issue.
And that's what I noticed right away. I mean, you're hinting at new characters coming into play. I'm not going to even spoil it because it's just I can just see so much epic violence and amazement and I'm sure body parts will fly, etc. I think it's going to be incredible. This third issue.
I'll spoil it a little. We meet at the end of the second issue, the Brandini sisters. The casino host, the casino manager, rather than calling the police about her kidnap victim, calls in these two very interesting characters, Erica and Cynthia Brandini, who do heavy work and sometimes wet work for the casino. And she hires the sisters to find and hunt down whoever kidnapped Maury, and if they can, to bring Maury back in one piece. And of all the supporting characters in the story, I just really love the Brandini sisters. I think they're great.
A comic book standpoint, especially with your scripts, I'm sure it's just going to be just amazing and crazy. So I can't wait, truly. I love the style that you have with both sisters. Two completely different styles for these sisters when it comes to the imagery that I saw. So I'm trying to figure out which one is the crazier of the two. I'm flipping a coin on that one. I think it's the blonde.
You'll find out. Believe me, you'll find out. You'll find out very, very soon.
Okay. And Maury's in a tough spot, but it seems like, between the casino managers to everything that he's gone through up until this point, it still seems like he has people watching his back.
He's hoping that they're watching his back. Maury at this point in the story is keeping his head. He's keeping a sense of humor for sure, but he's smart enough to realize that if things go his way, he can get out of this alive, which is not always the case for a kidnapping. And in fact, in the traditional kidnapping, the traditional ransom situation, the kidnapped victim, the body is long dead before any sort of ransom is being delivered. Kidnappings are bloody affairs, and Maury's hoping that he's going to come out on top with this, and he does have people rooting for him. Cheryl Dolly, the casino manager, wants to bring him back because she doesn't want the embarrassment for the casino. It'll ruin the casino. On the other hand, we meet Maury's wife, who is, let's say, ambivalent about her husband's situation.
It also seems like, Maury's the epitome of a true gambler. Like, he's gambling with money at first. Now he's gambling with his life. And he's gambling on the people that he hopes are going to support him. It's just like, will they support me? Will they not support me?
And with the kidnappers, to stick with your metaphor, I don't think he knows who to bet on yet. Mm-hmm. He's already been betrayed by one of them. And we see that at the end of issue 1. And as the story progresses, he'll try to see who the weak link is and who maybe he can get some sympathy from. And like you said, he's going to gamble. He's going to take a risk and try to make some alliances just to get out of this alive.
You've paced it so well between these first two chapters, and Maury is that lovable character. Like, you can't help not to root for the guy, truly. Like,
yeah.
So that goes back to your writing style. That goes back to planning out a great script, which you have done in the past with your other works as well too. With the next issue coming out, do you have that scheduled to?
Issue 3 is about half drawn in ink now. Should be out in April or early May at the very latest.
Okay, so not too far along.
Yeah,
you're not making us wait. That's good. I mean, it's pandemic waiting, so it's all fine.
We're trying to put 2 months between each issue, which is, I think, an understandable. It's a reasonable waiting period. But at the beginning of the second issue, I hope you noticed, there was a kind of a summary page of who the key characters are, who the players are, and what the story is so far. So if you've forgotten any of the details from the previous issue, we'll catch you back up. And that's actually something I lifted from Greg Rucka and Michael Lark's book Lazarus, which has now become, instead of a monthly, it's a quarterly.
Oh, wow.
And at the beginning of each issue on the inside front cover, they do this wonderful summary page. And I thought that was a really valuable thing for our readers, and frankly, something that I'd like to see in comics, because I don't always read my comics on a monthly schedule. Sometimes, I pick them up at the store when I have to, but I might binge 3 or 4 or 5 issues of a comic in a row, and not necessarily remember what happened before.
TV does this really well too. Even anime, like animation, cartoons, etc., mostly on, etc. I know we talked about that as well too. But I think it's a great way to catch yourself up. Like for me, I it's been a while since I've watched a series or read a comic book on a monthly or a weekly basis or a monthly basis or whenever it's released type deal. I like to binge en masse. I think that's just the way we're now consuming media on such a huge scale these days.
Yep.
And so to get an omnibus or to get a collection of a character or a series like the Hardways, to read it in one shot, I think is just the way we need to consume our media these days. Because if time is sometimes a factor, sometimes it isn't. But like you said, if you miss something, away we go. So the recaps, that I really appreciate your recaps. I really do, because for me, when it comes to characters and remembering people, I find it's sometimes difficult with whatever else is going on up here. So please keep it up.
Thank you.
Writing style, art style. So, and I'll ask this of Sean when I get to talk with him about chapter 2 here, issue 2. Was there anything that you wanted to see specifically in this chapter, or did you let Sean do his work once more?
I trust Sean. Not only are we collaborators on now, I think, 4 comics, but we're friends too. And we wouldn't keep working together if he didn't trust me as a writer and if I didn't trust him as an artist. So for the most part, the scripts I send him are pretty bare bones. I don't put a lot of description in. But there are some specific things that I want to give him direction on, and not to put the burden of finding the photo reference on his shoulders. For issue 1, a lot of issue 1 was shot inside a casino, obviously, and I sent him tons and tons of photo reference of, this is what a craps table looks like, this is what a poker chip looks like, this is what the cashier's cage looks like, and I didn't want him to worry about all that stuff, which can kind of be a pain to chase all that down. Mm-hmm. For issue 2, most of the story, without giving away too much, most of the story takes place in one setting. Mm-hmm. And Sean was pretty much free to design that setting. The kidnapper's house was pretty much free to design that however he wanted. And I think he did an absolutely terrific job. Mm-hmm. Where things got a little fun was again, without giving too much away, the setting that we see in the final pages of the story. Yeah. Where we meet the next 2 characters, where we meet the Brandini sisters, the next 2 characters who were introduced in the story. And I actually reached out to some friends of mine who are,
in the lifestyle.
I have to think of the right way to word this. They are professionals in the field in which the Brandini sisters work.
And they're in the lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They're in the lifestyle. And I asked them, what would this setting have? What kind of tools would there be? How would it be equipped? How would they be dressed? And it worked out great. And the people who helped me out were really happy with the final result.
Nice. That's good. You're going for authenticity. You're and you need to pull from all sources. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Did at any point in writing this script, did you have issues with? You're a true professional, but I'm saying, like, did you have any issues with kind of backing yourself into a hole with character interactions?
No, this whole story, the characters interact with each other, I think, very, very naturally. Just going to let that hang. Um, I the characters came to be fully formed really, really quickly, and I knew what their voices were. I knew what their motivations were. And once you've got that figured out, once they're real people in my head, it's easy to figure out how they would interact with each other. And characters kind of start out sometimes as mannequins. You don't know what they look like. You don't know how they act. They're blank. They're ciphers. And sometimes it's hard to figure out how character A is going to talk to character B and how they're going to react to a certain situation. In this case, it was very, very easy to figure out their dialogue, to figure out their patterns, to figure out their motivations, and then they just run away with the story.
Character interactions, we've already gone through that. Moving on to issue 2. Yeah, there's a lot I don't want you to spoil, because I think that these characters work so well together. The introduction of the new characters, even though it's hinted at kind of halfway through, and you've already talked about it with the Brandini sisters, which I think the name's great. I don't know why I think that name's great, because I'd have to look up what the Italian means of it, but
Well, I'll tell you where it comes from. I have a friend from college, one of my best friends from college, whose name is Cynthia, and her husband is Matthew Brand. And Cynthia is kind enough to have sponsored characters in a number of my stories, where either Matthew or she appear in the books, and she wanted to sponsor a character in this story, and I needed a name for these two sisters. And I've used Brand before. I just didn't want to use Brand again, but I thought Brandini sounded good.
yeah.
And it reminded me, I'm a big Godfather fan. It reminded me of Barzini, one of the villains in The Godfather, and it had a nice ring to it. And although they are not the visual likenesses of Cynthia and Erica. Cynthia's best friend when we were in college was a woman named Erica, and I thought it'd be kind of nice to have both Cynthia and Erica represented in this particular story. Although they couldn't be further from the depictions of the sisters in the Hardways.
That whole aspect of the likeness and people in this fictional work are truly that they are fictional type situation.
Yeah, there are a lot of likenesses throughout the Hardways. One of the things that we struggle to do in independent comics is fund them. It is expensive to make a comic book, to pay the art team, to pay the printer, to distribute a book. But one of my favorite things with crowdfunding, and this has been successful for me when I've been involved in Kickstarters, is to offer to have the sponsor drawn into a comic book. People really like that. And I've done that with nearly all of my self-published or independent comics, where for what I think is a relatively low fee, you can have your name appear in a comic book, or for a different fee, you could have your face. You could physically appear in this comic, either as a character or as a background character. And that has worked spectacularly well with the Hardways. There's more than a dozen real people scattered throughout all 5 chapters, either in names or in likenesses, and sometimes both. And for the most part, there are people who are paying to have the book drawn and lettered, and to see it be published. Without them, I wouldn't have the funding to pay Sean what I'm paying Sean. I wouldn't have the funding to pay Josh Southall, the letterer. It's a wonderful way to crowdfund a project, and it allows my friends to say, "Hey, look, I'm in a comic book.
So I did ask Twitter specifically to ask questions of you, Russell, when I posted that I was going to be interviewing you, and have one question from Steve Horton at Tropical Steve, if you know about him or not. He asked, "What do his captors really want from him, and what lengths will they go to get it?"
See, that's a good writer's question, and of course, Steve is a really talented comic book writer. What do they want from him? They want $300,000. That's what they want. And what lengths will they go to get it? They go pretty far. I'll tell you that. You had said something at the beginning of our interview, Kurt, that you predicted there were going to be body parts in the future, and you are not wrong. This will get bloody, not gratuitously. You know, I'm not looking to gross anybody out, but this is a story that does have a body count, as any good crime story should, and it's going to start rising pretty soon.
But it's always nice to see that too, because there have been times at past conventions where maybe I've done an interview with the creator in the past as well, and I can't recall who it was specifically. It was a while back, and they put me into one of their issues, and I didn't even realize it. I was just like,
cool.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, I love that fact that video games do this as well as comics like yourself, and to have your name immortalized in that type of media is truly awesome, and I'm glad that people do sponsor and support comics as they do with this method.
And it's not just comic book readers who are doing it too, although plenty of them are. But some of the sponsors who, some of the people who've decided to sponsor characters in this book are poker buddies of mine. They're people I know through my day job. They're people I know from college, like I said, and for some of them, this is the first comic book they've read since childhood.
Oh, wow.
And they're really digging it. I'm thinking of one person in particular who appears as one of the gamblers around the craps table in the first issue. He is not a comic book reader and is learning about the medium and is learning about comic book storytelling by asking me questions as this story is going on. And he's thrilled every time a new issue comes out. Because he's getting into it in a way that he never has before.
Maybe this might be a little off topic, but why would you think that people would never read comics before?
I don't know. I mean, I don't read poetry. I don't like Elizabethan fiction. It's a storytelling medium. And not everybody connects with every storytelling medium. Some people don't like television. One of my best friends refuses to watch episodic television. She wants the entire story in a movie in one sitting. And episodic TV drives her nuts. There are people out there who don't like movies. There are people out there, I can't believe people like this exist. There are people who don't like music. Oh, wow. I can see that comics aren't somebody's cup of tea. It's nothing I take personal. It bothers me when people who don't like comics accuse comic book fans of being juvenile or insult them in ways. I'm trying to tone this down a little from what's in my head. Who are insulting to fans of the medium, because that's what it is. It's a storytelling medium. And in that way, it's no different than prose fiction. It's no different than poetry. It's no different than songwriting. It's a way to tell a story. What you do with the medium, whether you write a Capes and Cowl story or a mystery or a story about cooking or a horror story, what you do with it sets each story apart from the others. But comics is just a storytelling medium. And probably the oldest storytelling medium. I mean, it's cartoons it's drawings on cave walls. You know, that was the first sequential art.
And the buffalo was still out of proportion either way. But I mean, still. It was something along the lines of, yeah, it was something I learned way back when in art history as well, like down in France, and apparently there are even older works in other areas of the world, obviously. Um, but I really find that it's an interactive medium in itself because you can talk to two different people reading the same information, the same comic, let's say, and they're going to give you two different opinions because it's what speaks to them.
Sure.
And so with the Hardways, especially, you're really diving into some great character interactions, and the response, as you said, has been the return on investment for issue two has been incredible. So it's speaking to people, and I'm glad they're speaking back.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully they'll stick around for issue three. That's the plan. If we keep to the schedule and knock on wood, I think we're going to. Um, the whole series, all five issues, should be done by the end of the year. Let's see. I can plan this out. April to May, and then probably July, August would be issue four, and September, October, probably October, November, December would be issue five, and that's also if we continue to self-publish digital first through Comixology. Right. We are, as I think I mentioned the last time, we are shopping this to publishers, and we've got a couple who are interested.
Oh, nice.
So if the story is picked up by a publisher, all bets are off as far as scheduling, because then we'd be looking at a print release, and we'd be working on their timetable, and that's a whole other animal. But if we continue to go digital first on our own through our imprint, the Double Down Comics imprint, ideally we'll have the whole thing published at least digitally first by the end of the year.
Speaking of self-publishing versus the publisher itself, or a publisher itself, I should say, what have you learned in dealing with both styles of publishing that have resonated with you?
I've self-published a lot of comics now. Most comic book creators start with self-publishing, and then if they're lucky, they can do work for hire for an imprint, for a small house, or work their way up to a big house like Marvel or DC or Dark Horse, or Image. My path in comics was the reverse. I started at DC and then had to learn how to self-publish. And I didn't know how hard it was. I really didn't think about how much work was involved in making a comic every step of the way. It's not just, when I worked for DC, I'd write a script, I'd send it to my editor, and then 4 months later, a comic book would hit the stands. I wasn't involved in the penciling process, the inking process, the lettering, the coloring, other than at each phase I'd get a proof to make sure there weren't any typos or any problems. But I didn't have to hire any of those people. I didn't have to do the cat wrangling to make sure that everything came out on time and everything was delivered in the right way. That was all done by somebody else. And I had to learn how to do all that myself, how to be the manager for this team of people that I had to put together myself. And then it was a matter of finding printers. Do I work in color? Do we do this in color, or do we only release it in black and white because it's a quarter of the cost? Is it something we're going to pitch to a small press, which I did a lot with a lot of my independent books? Or is it something I'm just going to self-publish? How many copies do I print? What's the return on investment if if I want to charge $5 for this book versus if I want to charge $3, how much money am I going to lose if I charge more but don't sell as many copies? How much money will I lose if I charge less and sell more copies? There's a lot of math involved in making comics, which I never really thought about. So yeah, it's hard. It's really difficult, but it's also challenging in a fun way, in an enjoyable way. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't keep doing it. And fortunately, I've worked with really amazing artists on my independent stuff. Guys like Sean Richardson, like Mark Stegbauer, like Marvin Mann, Those three gents have illustrated the majority of my independent work. And now I'm working with just a fantastic letterer, Josh Southall, who has lettered every independent work that I've done since Old Wounds came out.
Oh wow.
He's my go-to guy as a letterer because he's fun to work with. He's immensely talented. He hits his deadlines, and all that. It just makes Josh a joy to work with.
We're slowly wrapping it up here, though, Russell. I do appreciate you again coming on this show. Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you want to share with those that are watching and listening to this?
Well, I want to let people know that Hardways #2 is out on Comixology right now, along with Hardways #1. You can also get them if you prefer, if you're not a Comixology subscriber, but if you do want to download the book, you can get it at Russell-Lissau, Russell, actually hyphen, Lissau, Lissau .square.site. That's my online store. And you can find digital DRM free copies of Hardways #1 and Hardways #2, along with more than a dozen of the other comics that I've written available on that store. You can also get it on Josh Southall's store, and Sean Richardson has got a store where you can get those issues too. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at @rlissau. You can find me on Facebook. You can find the whole crew on Twitter, and most of us on Facebook. And we look forward to you guys reading the story and letting us know how you feel about it.
Good stuff. You know, time flies with you, Russell. It really does. I want to have you on for #3. In fact, I'll just say this right now. I'm going to have you on for every single episode, every single issue.
So, thank you.
So it's a running thing. So if you're sick of Russell, tough. He's coming on the show every single day, or rather every couple of months.
It's like the Walking Dead recaps.
Yeah, exactly. But with
Sure.
less zombies and better hygiene.
It's Vegas though, so I don't know about the hygiene.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with that. I mean, look, Hoover Dam. Anyhow, unfortunately, Russell, though, that does end this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. Thanks for shouting out about your social medias and where we can find you at. Everyone, though, you should look at the lower third, go to the website, purchase the book if you don't have a Comixology subscription. But tune in next week for another great interview on Two Geeks Talking, where everyone has a story to tell, and it's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching, and take the time to go to tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com, or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/tgtmedia. Hit that subscribe button, hit the comment, and definitely like the videos as well. It really does help me out as a content creator for great interviews like this with Russell. Have a good night, everyone. Hey, all, Kurt Sasso here from Two Geeks Talking. If you like this video and these quick clips here, make sure you take a look at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/tgtmedia. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe as well. Hit the bell to make sure you get notifications, of course, from videos like this here. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching over the years, and keep listening and watching for new and exciting interviews with talented and creative people in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. Thank you so much.